What if I told you that the most iconic luxury brand in human history was laughed at when it launched? That the man who built it was a German orphan with no formal education in watchmaking, who moved to a foreign country with nothing but an idea that the whole world said was stupid? Today, Rolex generates over $10 billion in revenue every single year. It holds 32% of the entire global luxury watch market. It outsells Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Omega, Cartier, and Richard Mille combined. But none of that was guaranteed. None of it was obvious. This is the real story of Rolex, the failures nobody talks about, the genius plays that changed everything, and exactly how Hans Wilsdorf turned a laughingstock product into the world's most recognizable status symbol. Stay till the end, because the most important business lesson in this entire story comes at minute 12, and it'll change the way you think about building anything. Chapter 1. The Orphan Who Bet Everything. Let's start in 1881. A small town called Kulmbach, Bavaria, deep in southern Germany. A boy named Hans Wilsdorf is born into a comfortable middle-class family. His father runs an iron tools business. Life looks steady. Then, tragedy. By the time Hans is 12 years old, both his parents are dead. His uncle sells off the family business. Hans and his siblings are shipped off to boarding schools, separated, with no inheritance. This is important, because Hans Wilsdorf never had a safety net. From age 12 onward, he was entirely on his own. At 19, instead of wallowing, he did something decisive. He walked into a Swiss watchmaking firm in La Chaux-de-Fonds, one of the centers of Swiss horology, and got a job as a clerk and correspondence writer. He wasn't building watches. He was writing letters, learning the business from the inside, studying how watches moved from factories to customers, how marketing worked, how the whole supply chain functioned. Most people in his position would have stayed comfortable. Hans Wilsdorf used it as a masterclass. By his early 20s, he'd moved to London, the financial capital of the world at the time, with a clear vision in his head. And that vision, it was considered absolutely insane. Chapter 2. The idea everyone laughed at. Picture 1905. If you wore a watch on your wrist, people laughed at you. Wrist watches were considered, and I'm quoting the culture of the time, a woman's accessory. Men wore pocket watches. Big, solid, serious pocket watches. The idea of strapping a watch to your wrist like a bracelet? That was effeminate. Weak. Ridiculous. Even within the watch industry itself, watchmakers laughed at wristwatches. They said the mechanisms were too delicate, too small to be accurate. They'd break. They'd leak. They couldn't possibly work. Hans Wilsdorf didn't care. In 1905, at just 24 years old, with only modest capital, he founded a company in London with his brother-in-law Alfred Davis. They called it Wilsdorf and Davis. Their address, 83 Hatton Garden, London. The business model was simple but smart. They imported high-precision Swiss movements from a manufacturer called Hermann Eglier in Bienne, Switzerland, and placed them into quality watch cases, selling to jewelers across the British Empire. But here's what nobody gives Wilsdorf credit for. His very first move was an audacious bet. He traveled to Bienne and placed what he himself later described as the largest order ever booked for wristlet watches at that time, worth several $100,000 Swiss francs. He didn't have that kind of money. He was a 24-year-old orphan. But he believed, with absolute, irrational conviction, that the wristwatch was the future. He wrote, "I was sure the wristwatch had a brilliant future before it. People said a tiny mechanism could never withstand the violent gestures of the arm. I ignored them. This is your first lesson." The biggest companies in history were almost always built on ideas that conventional wisdom called stupid. Chapter 3. The name, the brand, the crown. By 1908, Wilsdorf knew he needed something more than a business. He needed a brand. A name that could appear on a watch dial, short, punchy, recognizable in any language, easy to say whether you were in London, Paris, or Hong Kong. He spent weeks trying different combinations of letters. Nothing worked. Then one morning, and this is one of the great brand origin stories of all time, he was riding on the upper deck of a horse-drawn omnibus along Cheapside in the city of London. And suddenly, as if from nowhere, a word appeared in his mind. Rolex. He later said, "A genie whispered Rolex in my ear." Some say it derives from the French horlogerie exquise, exquisite watchmaking. Others believe he simply invented it because it sounded like a watch being wound. Either way, it was perfect. Short, strong, global. The same in every language. In 1908, he registered the Rolex trademark in Switzerland. But here's the thing most people miss about these early years. Rolex wasn't just selling watches. Wilsdorf was building credibility, relentlessly, obsessively. In 1910, a Rolex wristwatch became the first wristwatch in history to receive the Swiss certificate of chronometric precision from the official watch rating center in Bienne. In 1914, just 9 years after founding the company, Rolex became the first wristwatch ever to receive a Class A precision certificate from the Kew Observatory in England. This was a test previously reserved only for marine chronometers used by the British Royal Navy. Think about what this means. In 1914, a wristwatch passed a Navy-grade accuracy test for the first time in history. And it was Rolex. Suddenly, nobody was laughing anymore. Chapter 4, War, Taxes, and the Great Escape to Geneva. Just as things were accelerating, the world fell apart. World War I broke out in 1914. And for Wilsdorf, a German national running a business in London, this was a crisis. The British government slapped a 33% import duty on luxury goods. The cost of silver and gold for watch cases shot up with heavy export taxes. Manufacturing in England became economically impossible. Most companies would have collapsed. Wilsdorf didn't panic. He moved. First to Bienne, Switzerland in 1915. Then, after the war, to Geneva in 1919, where he registered the company as Monters Rolex SA. This was a stroke of genius disguised as a forced move. Geneva was the heart of Swiss watchmaking culture, credibility, and global prestige. By moving there, Rolex wasn't just relocating, it was permanently aligning itself with the highest standards of Swiss horology. Switzerland would become Rolex's greatest competitive moat. And then Wilsdorf did something even smarter. Chapter 5. The Oyster, the world's first waterproof watch. In the 1920s, Wilsdorf was obsessed with one problem: dust, moisture, sweat. You see, no matter how precise your watch movement was, it was worthless if the environment could get inside and corrode it. Every wristwatch in the world had this problem. It was considered an unavoidable limitation of the technology. Wilsdorf refused to accept it. In 1926, working with a third-party casemaker, Rolex produced a revolutionary watch case with a screw-down crown and hermetically sealed case back, completely airtight and watertight. They called it the Oyster. Like the shell. Sealed. Protected. Impenetrable. But Wilsdorf knew something powerful. A claim without proof is just advertising. He needed proof. Public, undeniable, dramatic proof. In 1927, a young British woman named Mercedes Gleitze attempted to swim the English Channel, a brutal 21-mile crossing through frigid, churning water. Wilsdorf gave her a Rolex Oyster to wear on her wrist during the swim. She swam for over 15 hours through the open ocean. When she emerged on the other side, she held up her wrist. The Rolex was working perfectly. Wilsdorf didn't wait. He had already booked the entire front page of the London Daily Mail, Britain's biggest newspaper, to run the announcement the next morning. The Rolex Oyster, the wonder watch that defies the elements. This was genius marketing. Real-world demonstration. Front page of national press. The world's first waterproof watch, proven by a real human swimmer in the real ocean. This is how Rolex got its first massive wave of customers. Not by advertising features. By staging proof. Sales exploded. Chapter 6. The Perpetual Engine, solving a 300-year-old problem. But Wilsdorf wasn't done innovating. There was still a problem with wristwatches. You had to manually wind them every day. Miss a winding, your watch stopped. For precision timekeeping, this was a real limitation. In 1931, Rolex invented and patented the perpetual rotor, a self-winding mechanism that used the natural motion of the wearer's wrist to continuously wind the mainspring. For the first time in watchmaking history, a watch could wind itself. Automatically. Forever. The Oyster Perpetual was born, combining the waterproof Oyster case with the self-winding perpetual movement. This is the foundation of almost every modern automatic watch on the planet. Hundreds of watch brands use versions of this technology today. Rolex invented it. By this point, Rolex wasn't just a watch company. It was a technological institution. Chapter 7. The Endorsement Playbook. How Rolex Scaled to Millions. Here's where Wilsdorf's genius truly separates him from every other entrepreneur of his era. He understood, decades before modern marketing, that a luxury product is only as valuable as the people who wear it. So he engineered associations with the most elite, high-stakes, aspirational figures in the world. 1933, Sir Malcolm Campbell, British land speed record holder, endorsed Rolex after wearing one during his record-breaking runs. 1935, Rolex became the official watch of RAF pilots. When British airmen were captured in World War II and their Rolexes confiscated by Germans, Wilsdorf personally wrote to every POW offering to replace their watch, with payment deferred until after the war was over. No proof required. Just write to us and tell us what happened. Think about that. He gave away watches to prisoners of war. Not for profit. For loyalty. For story. Those pilots came home and told that story for the rest of their lives. 1953. Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay wore Rolex Oyster Perpetuals when they became the first humans to summit Mount Everest. Wilsdorf launched the Rolex Explorer in their honor. Same year, Rolex launched the Submariner, the world's first dive watch rated to 100 meters, for the new era of scuba diving. 1954, the GMT Master was developed in partnership with Pan American Airlines for their pilots, who needed to track 2 time zones simultaneously on transatlantic flights. 1960, a specially sealed Rolex was attached to the hull of Jacques Picard's Trieste bathyscaphe, which descended to the deepest point on Earth, the Mariana Trench, nearly 11,000 meters underwater. It survived. Perfectly. This is the Rolex playbook. Find the most extreme, high-stakes human achievement. Put a Rolex on it. Document everything. Not celebrities. Not paid actors. Real achievements. Real proof. Every association built the brand's core identity. Rolex goes where humans push the limits. Chapter 8. The structure that made it untouchable. In 1944, Wilsdorf's beloved wife Florence died. Grief-stricken, he made a decision that would define Rolex for the next century. He established the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a private charitable trust, and transferred all of his Rolex shares into it. When Wilsdorf himself died in 1960, the foundation became the sole owner of Rolex SA. Here's why this was genius on a level most people don't appreciate. Because Rolex is owned by a private charitable foundation, it has no shareholders demanding quarterly profits. It never went public. No Wall Street analysts. No activist investors. No pressure to dilute the brand for short-term growth. Rolex can make decisions that take decades to pay off. They can say no to distribution deals. They can control exactly how many watches enter the market. They can build scarcity as a feature, not a bug. This structure is the reason Rolex could survive the 1970s quartz crisis, when Japanese companies like Seiko unleashed cheap, highly accurate quartz movements that nearly destroyed the Swiss watch industry. Most Swiss brands collapsed. Rolex doubled down on mechanical watchmaking, knowing their customers didn't want accuracy. They wanted legacy. This structure is why Rolex, a private company, can outsell the combined revenues of 5 major competitors without ever listing on a stock exchange. The ownership structure is, quietly, Rolex's greatest competitive advantage. Chapter 9. From $0 to $10 billion, the numbers. Let's talk numbers, because the growth trajectory of Rolex is staggering. In 1905, Wilsdorf started with modest capital and a small office in Hatton Garden, London. The company had no revenue. By 1914, just 9 years later, Rolex had over 40 employees and had earned a Q Observatory Class A certificate. They were exporting watches across the British Empire, Australia, New Zealand, and the Far East. By 1931, with the Oyster Perpetual, Rolex had established itself as the technical leader in wristwatches globally. By the 1950s and 60s, with Everest, the Submariner, the GMT Master, Rolex had become the aspirational brand of achievers worldwide. The modern revenue numbers are almost incomprehensible. 2019, $6 billion. 2021, $8 billion. 2022, $9.3 billion. 2023, $10.1 billion CHF, over $11.5 billion USD, the first Swiss watch brand ever to cross $10 billion in a single year. 2024, $10.58 billion CHF, holding 32% of the entire global luxury watch market. And analysts estimate the company's total value at between $80 billion and $100 billion. Rolex produces roughly 1.2 million watches per year. That's it. 1 million. They could produce more. They choose not to. The waiting list is the product. The scarcity is the marketing. And this is the final, crucial lesson. Chapter 10. The lessons. What Rolex actually teaches you. People think Rolex is a watch company. It's not. Rolex is a belief company. It sells you a belief about who you are and what you're capable of. When you buy a Rolex, you're not buying 1.2 million Swiss machined parts. You're buying into a story that connects you to Everest, to the Mariana Trench, to land speed records, to transatlantic flights, to every human who ever pushed past the limit. That's what Hans Wilsdorf built. And here are the 5 lessons he left behind. 1. Bet on the contrarian idea. In 1905, wristwatches were a joke. Wilsdorf bet everything on them anyway. The biggest opportunities always look ridiculous at the start. 2. Obsess over proof, not claims. Wilsdorf didn't just say his watch was waterproof. He put it on a swimmer crossing the English Channel and booked the front page of the biggest newspaper in Britain. Proof beats advertising every single time. 3. Associate with greatness, not popularity. Rolex didn't sponsor celebrities. It sponsored achievers, Everest, the deep ocean, land speed records. Build your brand around aspiration, not familiarity. 4. Control your structure. The private foundation structure gave Rolex something no publicly traded competitor has: patience. And patience compounds into dynasty. 5. Scarcity is not a limitation, it's a strategy. Rolex produces far fewer watches than it could. The waiting list isn't a supply problem. It's a desire machine. Making people wait makes them want it more. Hans Wilsdorf died in 1960 in Geneva. He never saw a $10 billion revenue year. He never saw his watches on the wrists of presidents, astronauts, and billionaires across the world. But he built the system that made it inevitable. An orphan from Bavaria who moved to London with a crazy idea, an unshakable conviction, and an almost irrational standard for quality. The next time someone tells you your idea is too niche, too early, or too ridiculous, remember a 24-year-old in 1905, sitting in a small office in Hatton Garden, placing the largest order for wristwatches the world had ever seen. He wasn't wrong. He was just early. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, and drop in the comments which Rolex business lesson hit you hardest.